Hi, everyone, and welcome back for another episode of Malice in the Mitten. I am your host, Tracy Preston, along with my bestie, Christine Mulligan. Hey, Christine.
Hey, Trace. Hey, everybody. I've been getting a lot of people telling me that they're listening lately, and it's super cool. So welcome back, everybody. What are we getting into today, Trace?
Well, today's story actually comes from Todd and I's hometown of Charlotte, Michigan, and this is a crazy one. Oh, my goodness. So let's get into it. This is Season 5, Episode 1, Robert Caraballo. Blueberry fields are abundant in western Michigan, along the Lake Michigan shores in the lower peninsula, the Mitten portion. The sandy soil and climate are ideal for growing blueberries. Michigan is one of the largest blueberry producing states in the United States, and in 2023, Michigan produced more than 87 million pounds of blueberries on nearly 17,000 acres. There are over 20 varieties of blueberries growing in Michigan. Michigan State developed new varieties from wild plants that grew along the Great Lakes. The Michigan blueberry industry provides more than 6,600 jobs on an annual full-time equivalent basis. Some farms that produce blueberries allow you to pick your own. People from all over come every year to pick fresh blueberries from the many blueberry farms here in the Mitten.
Okay, I'm just going to be a little bit of an ass right now. I'm going to say, well, it's good that everybody's getting used to picking their own berries up from Michigan.
Oh, I know.
I just think that's funny.
Yep, exactly. It kind of puts a new twist on it, doesn't it? From want to have to.
Yeah, that's all. I'm sorry. I'm just being a wise ass.
I get it.
Picking their own berries. Go ahead. Let's go.
Yep. All right. So it was on one of these farms on May 8th, 2002, in Grand Haven, Michigan, in Ottawa County, that a blueberry farmer discovered something truly horrific. He would patrol the fields every couple of days and came upon an area in the woods in the field that had been burned. In the area that was burned, there was a metal footlocker. The farmer had to look twice because he couldn't believe his eyes. And in fact, he was so shocked by what he had seen, he kept driving. Like, he stopped and was like, am I seeing what I'm seeing? Because what happened is he's driving in like his pickup truck. You know, he has a 2-lane dirt path that he patrols, goes through the farm and looks at everything. So after he saw it, he was like, I'm going to keep driving, because this guy legit was so shocked. He thought, when I circle back, this is going to be gone. But when he circled back, it wasn't gone. Now, this day, this farmer had forgotten to take his cell phone with him. So when he circled back, body and footlocker still there, he kind of boogied off to his farmer friend next door because he saw him out in the field, hoping that he had his cell phone with him. So that's what he did, and that's when he made the 911 call. Police gathered evidence at the site, tried to identify the body with dental records, and followed countless leads, but to no avail. At most, unknown males are dubbed John Doe, and they actually decided to call this unknown man Jack in the Box to give him a touch of personality.
Well, that's kind of funny.
I know. I was like, what? Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry. I couldn't let that one go. Why did they name him Jack in the Box? That's a lot.
Yeah. Well, when I was watching, because I found a bunch of stuff on this. When I was watching it, like, they put this dude in a big, like one of those big metal footlockers, and what he actually saw was it was open, and it was like they opened up the box, and like they never cut this guy up into pieces, but you could see they blurred it all out, but you could see like his legs sticking out of one end and like his head kind of on the other end. It's pretty horrific.
It sounds like a mob hit. Was the mob up in Michigan?
I know. There's some crazy. I'm telling you, girl, we got it all. But Jack in the Box, I thought, man, that's kind of rough. But hey, you know, like nurses, they probably have a sick sense of humor. All right, so in the footlocker was a hammer, a wooden baseball bat, a pad that was sort of like what you would use on like outdoor furniture, some rope, and a plastic bag, all of which were burned. It was determined that the man died from suffocation. However, there was blunt force trauma to the head from some kind of a blunt object. It was surmised that the hammer was used as well as a broken wooden baseball bat. They searched dental records in the area, but nothing. The victim had had some dental work, but they thought maybe that was done out of the country because there was nothing they could find here. Now, I will go on to say that, when the officers were looking at this very badly charred body, they knew he had dental work because, there was a bridge that he had had, but it had, because of the way he was burnt, had kind of fallen down into the mouth. So they're like, this person had dental work somewhere. With no further leads in the case and in a last-ditch effort in 2004, authorities asked a communications professor from Hope College to make a documentary titled Jack in the Box to help do anything they could to help maybe solve this homicide. But the case still went cold. Although the case went cold, apparently the documentary jogged some of the foggy memories of some of the family members, and a couple of emails were sent in, and finally, Jack in the Box was given a name. In 2015, his identity was confirmed. His name was Roberto Caraballo, and I don't speak Spanish, so I'm doing my best. Now, there's not a lot known about Roberto, as he was from the Dominican Republic. He was trying to turn his life around for the good, but unfortunately for Roberto, he would not have that chance. This heinous crime was not committed in Ottawa County, where he was found. It was committed in Eaton County in Charlotte, Michigan, on Horatio Street, where Roberto resided with his wife Beverly McCollum, along with her daughter Deneen Descharmes, and their daughter Cicely, and another daughter, Tasha. And none of these sisters had the same fathers. Christopher McMillan was a friend of Deneen's and hung out at their house quite a lot. According to Beverly, he was Deneen's boyfriend, but according to Christopher, they were just friends. Christopher actually turned state's evidence and tells the story of what happened. Now, I also watched the testimony of Christopher, so I learned a little bit more as well. So Christopher, he was actually from Texas. He ended up in Charlotte because he had family up here, right? He was kind of shacking up with his brother and his girlfriend, but he had kind of fallen asleep while smoking. This dude was a partier, right? Smoking cigarettes, smoking pot, doing coke, drinking alcohol. So he had fallen asleep in a chair at his brother's, and of course he was smoking, so he dropped the cigarette and it burned quite a big hole in his brother's girlfriend's blanket, which was, something that was special to her. So they're like, nope, you got to go. They kicked his ass out. So that's why he was spending so much time at the home of Beverly with, as we now know, of course, the murder victim. He said that he would hang out and drink and smoke weed and play cards. Now, Christopher ended up meeting Tasha when he was at a gas station pumping gas. And he noticed she kind of spoke with like a southern draw. And to him, immediately, he was like, oh, that sounds like Texas. So they kind of started chatting it up, exchanged phone numbers. And then the two of them would start hanging out and getting high all the time. And then that's how he came to be hanging out at Beverly's all the time. Because they'd always hang out, smoke pot. He'd sleep there, that kind of thing.
So is this Christopher, is he the boyfriend of Deneen, which is the daughter, or is he chatting up the wife? Or the girlfriend? I'm not sure. I'm confused.
He is not the boyfriend of anybody. He's just, Tasha's his good friend, which is one of the daughters. Deneen, also one of the daughters of Beverly, and then Cicely. So there's three girls in the house, right? All different dads. So, he's kind of freeloading. Like he is kicked out of his brother's house. So he's hanging out over there and getting high all the time, doing coke, drinking, having a good old time. So he just kind of crashed there. And then when he wasn't there, he had another friend's house. So he would kind of bounce back and forth between both houses. So he was not romantically involved. He's just hanging out and partying.
Okay, I get it. All right. I'm on board now. Okay, go ahead.
All right. Right. So he said that they would hang out and drink and smoke and, party, play cards, all that kind of thing. And he also stated that Robert didn't really like him very much, but he still hung out all the time. He said that Beverly talked to him and Deneen, which is the other daughter that's in the house, because she wanted to get rid of Robert. In reality, he was just cramping her style and she was tired of him. Now, mind you, Beverly and Roberto, they are married. They are legally married. Now, how he came to be here was he was in prison, Roberto, right? He was in prison for I don't know how many years, and I think it was related to drugs, like dealing drugs, selling drugs, doing drugs. He was pinched in prison for a while, and now he's back. And, like Beverly, she has her own like master suite. The girls have their own rooms. But Roberto was living in the basement. That's where he was. And I'm also going to tell you, I've seen pictures of this basement because I watched the trial, and it's a Michigan basement. And like I've said in the past, a Michigan basement is a dirt floor basement. And it was filthy down there. So it was like she had him in like a torture chamber as far as I'm concerned. It was gross, but that's where he was slotted to stay. Oh, you want to be here? That's cool. Down in the Michigan basement you go. Now, instead of getting a divorce like any normal person would do, she roped her own 20-year-old daughter and her friend Christopher into her plot, her plan to kill this man. She said that Roberto was abusive physically, emotionally, and sexually to her children. And this is what they're telling Christopher to kind of get him into, rope him into helping them out. So to Christopher, that was bad. Bad juju. So he agreed to help. So they proceeded to formulate their plan. The plan was contrived days prior. It was Beverly's idea, and everything she told them was everything that needed to happen. The plan was that they would get him down into the basement, and they would beat him to death, and then they would get rid of the body. While the younger children were at school, that's exactly what they did. They carried out their plan. Roberto was at the doorway of the basement stairs when Beverly, right, they were kind of going down the stairs. So here's the plan. The plan was get Roberto down in the basement. Now, Roberto, being from the Dominican Republic, baseball's pretty big there. So he was a huge, huge baseball fan. So he had a wooden bat down there. So the plan was get him down there. Christopher, you hit him with the bat in the head, and then we're going to beat him to death with a hammer. That's the plan. So kids are at school. Roberto's going down the stairs. Christopher's at the ready, hanging out with a baseball bat, ready to roll. Deneen also down at the ready with a hammer. So Beverly's walking behind Roberto. They're going down the stairs, and bam! She kicks him in the back, knocks him down the stairs. Christopher was then, of course, supposed to hit him with the bat, and he swung so damn hard that he broke the bat in half on like a structural metal pole that's in the basements here to kind of hold up the house. So his swing wasn't calculated very well. Like he hit the pole, never hit the dude, never hit Roberto, and the bat broke in half. But Roberto's down. So while he's down, Deneen, because this dude screwed up with the bat, Deneen started hitting this man in the head with a hammer, and then Beverly grabs the hammer from her like she's not doing it enough or doing it good enough. And she starts whacking and whacking and whacking. So much so that the hammer got stuck in this man's head. So Christopher pulled it out. Beverly, who I might add is kind of on the heavier side, she was sitting on Roberto's chest. They covered this man's head with a plastic bag, took a rope and tied it around his neck, and Beverly sat there until the bag was no longer moving and they knew he was dead. So after Roberto died, Beverly made them all take off their clothes and put them in a bucket as they were covered in copious amounts of blood. They changed clothing and went upstairs. They proceeded to go down to the local dollar store to get some cleaning supplies so they could clean up that mess. Because according to Christopher, there was a lot of blood. They managed to get it cleaned up, And then Christopher was sent to pick up the two children from school. And as soon as the two children walked in the door, Beverly told them to get to their bedrooms because they were grounded and not to come out. Christopher said that he noticed in the time that he was gone, there was now a padlock on the basement door. Now, at some point, they put Roberto into like a big footlocker. Now, Beverly had this empty because it was kind of underneath like a TV or something, so she emptied that out. Christopher said that they couldn't close the lid to the locker. After they loaded the footlocker up into Roberto's van, along with the two younger children that they had just picked up from school, they all went for a long drive. Christopher did not know the area, so he didn't really know where they were at, but they did end up in Ottawa County near Grand Haven in a blueberry field. They pulled the footlocker into the blueberry field, then they poured gasoline onto it and lit Roberto, the trunk, and the contents on fire.
The two little kids are in the car with them?
Mm-hmm.
What the hell? They're just getting the whole family involved?
Yeah. Well, from watching again the testimonies, now these two little kids, this woman, Beverly, she's, I don't really know where she's from. She speaks several languages, and she's, you know how like Italian women in New York, women of the Middle East, they're very loud and strong, and they use their hands a lot when they talk. You know the type I'm talking about, right? These are strong women. And so, right, this woman ran this house. These kids did what she said, right? So first she sends them upstairs. You're grounded. Get in bed. Now, instead of leaving them alone in bed, because she's a great mom, doesn't want anything to happen, she loads them up in this van and tells them to lay down and go to sleep. Well, they do what mom says. She runs that house. So during testimony, Cicely, one of the younger girls that was laying down, she testified that she heard like this explosion. And then the next thing you knew, they were driving away. So the explosion woke her up. They're driving away. One of her sisters, right, Deneen, she's running to get in the van. And she's like, what happened? And her mom's like, lay down, go back to sleep. So she's like, so that's what I did. And their life was so chaotic that this really wasn't something that would be like, oh my God, something's wrong. Like, because something was always going on. So it's kind of crazy.
All right. Okay. All right. I'm with you.
They pulled the footlocker into the blueberry field, poured gasoline on it, lit Roberto and the trunk and its contents on fire, and then they drove back to Charlotte. When Cicely asked her mother where her father was, she was told that he had left, that he had abandoned them. And she didn't really believe that. So now remember, this little girl had her father, Roberto. She was little. Then he was in jail in prison for a few years. He comes back. He's living in the basement. She's like, oh my God, it feels so great to have a family. Because really, it's always been like her mom. And it doesn't really sound like, whatever men or man she was involved with, they were never really stayed around long. So, what this little girl, Cicely, would do, she would come home from school. She'd immediately go down in the basement, say hi to her dad. She said he's always down there reading his Bible. So that's her routine since dad came home from prison. So now she's like, where's dad? And her mother is like, oh, he abandoned you. He doesn't want to be with you. He doesn't love you, that kind of thing. So that's what this poor little girl now is being told, which is horrific. So Beverly, kids and all, scoops all of them up. She flees the country within a couple weeks to Jamaica. And the two younger children and Christopher said he went with them as well. And he returned to the United States about a month later. Deneen moved to Texas. When Cicely confronted her mother years later, her mother told her that she had killed Roberto in self-defense, and Deneen and her friends came down to the basement to finish him off. This poor little girl went for years thinking that her father abandoned them, but in her heart, she knew that he would never do that, and that her mother lied to her about his death. Also, the other thing that I learned from the testimony is that this little girl Cicely was never involved in any extracurricular activities. But when Roberto came back and moved in, he put her in swimming, he put her in softball, doing things with her. So she's like, she felt the love from her dad. So she all along is like, something's not right here. Well, authorities arrested Beverly McCollum in Italy in 2020 and she was extradited to Michigan in 2022. Now, there's always been a question about who was in charge, and I think the defendant taking the stand kind of proved who was the leader of this bunch. You have a 20-year-old and a 25-year-old, and then all of a sudden, you have a 42-year-old mom. She was in charge. She knew what was going on. Now, I also want to add in that when Beverly moved to Jamaica, she had during her testimony, she said that she had like a 20-year relationship with this guy in Jamaica. So she moves there, they get married, she ends up getting pregnant and has a little boy. And I'm left wondering, how does this woman have the means to, now the house that she was living in Charlotte, it was a house, but like they rented the bottom of the house and they had the basement. Top portion of the house was rented out to someone else and their dog. So you don't have a ton of money if this is how you're living in Charlotte. Where are you getting the money to go to Jamaica? Then after Jamaica, she ends up living in Pakistan for a while. And then from Pakistan, now she's in Rome, Italy. So I'm real curious about where is she getting all the money for this? Doesn't make a lot of sense.
But it's amazing how some people kind of flit their way through life and just kind of grifting and couch surfing and by the goodness of other people. I have seen it throughout my life, and every time I see it or hear about it, it is surprising to me. But no matter how surprising it is, it does happen. People kind of just get by the good graces of others. It's amazing when you see it, but it is out there.
Yeah, like is she getting money from dealing drugs? Is she hustling other men? Are there more men? Are there, right? Does she marry men? Does she kill men?
All of the above. Mm-hmm. Yeah, all of the above. She's just doing whatever she needs to do to get by. And she's just hustling and probably scamming people all along the way.
Mm-hmm. As this woman speaks several languages, I'm not quite certain where she's from. And I don't really know what got her to Charlotte either. Now, she says she has family in Charlotte during her testimony. I don't know. Interesting. Anyhow, prosecutor Doug Lloyd was referring to McCollum's oldest daughter, Deneen Ducharme, and Ducharme's friend, Christopher McMillan, who had already been convicted on murder charges in Roberto's death, received life in prison without the chance of parole. McMillan, which is Christopher, he testified for the prosecution and said the killing was planned days before the actual murder. McMillan pleaded guilty to second-degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder. He also agreed to testify against Deneen and Beverly. He received 15 to 40 years in prison for his role. The boss of that plan was the defendant, and Deneen and Beverly helped carry out the plan, Lloyd argued. The motive for killing was unclear, at least up until the trial when Lloyd said the picture became clearer. Quote, "I think the motive came out in this trial," he said after the verdicts, adding that, quote, "structure wasn't really a thing until Roberto, out of federal prison, had moved in with the family. Quote, I think that kind of got in the way of her doing the things she wanted to do." During closing arguments, Lloyd noted that Beverly moved to Jamaica about a few weeks after the murder to be with what at least one witness described as the love of her life, a man she would eventually marry and have another child with, which I already spoke about. Quote, "Robert being around was cramping her lifestyle." Eaton County Public Defender Timothy Havis argued that the only people who had a motive to kill Robert was Deneen and Beverly. Beverly testified that Roberto didn't like Christopher and wanted to kick both Deneen and Christopher out of the house. Cicely Caraballo, the daughter of the victim, and his sister were one of two family members who gave victim impact statements before Judge Janice Cunningham delivered her verdict. Now I'm going to go back because there's a recording of the daughters of Cicely's impact statement, and it was powerful. I was crying.
I'm reading this on behalf of my father, Franklin Caraballo, because he wanted me to make sure that I read this for him, and our family as a whole. Our family would first like to express our deepest gratitude to this court and to the justice system of the United States of America for making sure justice was done in my brother's murder. We especially want to thank Detective Robert Donker, his team, and the entire investigative task force for their unwavering dedication in identifying an individual whose identity and background they did not know when Roberto's body was discovered in 2002. The respect you all have shown my brother did not and will never go unnoticed. We will forever be thankful. My mother died with the desire to see my brother again and always held on to the hope that my brother was alive. She would often say that every time the phone rang, she thought it was Roberto. Beverly, you know our family is very united. So when Roberto stopped calling my mother, I knew something happened to him. I knew you killed him. Weeks before you killed my brother, he wrote me to say that he wanted to leave you, but wouldn't, because he didn't want to leave Sicily with you. Because you had always, and also because you had threatened to kill him. These were his written words to me. You have always been known as someone who will do anything to get what you want, regardless of who you hurt. The evil inside you can be seen in how you recruited your oldest daughter and her friend to murder Roberto. The only explanation we have is that you murdered him because he didn't want to be with you. We want you to know and understand that although you changed the makeup of our family, you didn't break us. And your attempts to taint Roberto's name are in vain, because those who knew Roberto know he was a good person, a great son, an amazing brother, an exceptional friend, a phenomenal father, and a loving uncle. Words that will never be said about you. We take some solace in that Sicily was reunited with our family nearly 10 years ago and has visited us in the Dominican Republic on several occasions. We've been fortunate to be a part of Sicily's journey through her adulthood and now motherhood. Being a part of her life allows us to create memories with her and my brother's 2 beautiful grandchildren, something that we are sure Roberto rejoices in from heaven. Honorable Judge Cunningham, the Caraballo family asks that you please spare no mercy when sentencing this defective human who was capable of recruiting her daughter to commit a murder, a daughter who has already been sentenced to life in prison, making it only fair that Beverly is dealt a similar hand. Judge Cunningham, it is with the utmost respect that our family requests that this woman is never allowed back in society, because in all honesty, the depths of her evil are still unknown. Thank you.
I have a statement I'm gonna try to get through, and if not, I know Doug has my back, so. Your Honor, Judge Janice Cunningham, my name is Cicely Igwe Alexandria Caraballo. It is through one of the worst imaginable experiences that I appear to you today as the daughter of the victim, Roberto Caraballo, and also the daughter of the convicted. This is a day I was never sure would come. A day that has been relentlessly on my mind since 2015. I am grateful for the detectives and the prosecutors who have spent even longer continuously working to bring justice for my father. I am grateful for Your Honor, Judge Cunningham, and the people of the jury for your rationality and unprejudiced handling of this case. It is through all your combined efforts that I can only begin to peacefully mourn my father, Roberto Caraballo. Since detectives showed up at my door in October 2016, I have not spoken directly to my mother. Despite her ill will and disgraceful parenting, I am here to face her today as a human you cannot take credit for. It is through what I can only describe as the grace from God that I was able to discern the life that I wanted to lead. despite the hand that I was dealt. I am a proud mother, a partner, sister, friend, and veteran to our country. May these next words make their way to what was once the soul of my mother. This will be the last time that you see me in the flesh and the last time you hear my voice in the same room. While I do not expect empathy or regret from you, I am compelled to speak my truth for my own peace and to be rid of you from this day forward. As the mother of two beautiful children, I cannot fathom your hatred and your greed and lifetime of terrible actions you've committed to your family, to your own family, and all those you've ever lured into your presence. You have taken the life of a beloved man who was striving to improve himself for his own well-being and for his own daughter. Visiting my father's home in the Dominican Republic to meet his family and his childhood friends revealed a striking contrast to what I know is the truth on your end. Roberto Alejandro Caraballo was dearly loved and respected by many. And his memory continues to be cherished and missed by all who knew him, even now. In this victim impact statement, I wanted to highlight how your actions do not stop at the loss of my father. My family as a whole has endured profound suffering at your hands. My eldest sister, Deneen Rochelle Ducharme, who was born with so much God-given potential to be an amazing, successful human, is now going to rot her life away in prison, not only due to her own choices, but also your lifetime of unspeakable control, manipulation, and abuse. My second sister, Tasha, who somehow still tries to love you, still answers your phone calls because she pities you for being lonely and being in jail. She tries to love you. She still bears the scars on her body and her mind that you've left her. Her heart forever seeks the love of a family that we were never given. And I know that search all too well. My baby brother, he passed away unexpectedly in 2022. He was left in a different country at 16 years old. What kind of mother are you? I was not able to hold him or say goodbye since you ripped him from our lives when he was just 12 years old. It is unfortunate that you are our mother. My baby brother stood with me and he knew you had to face justice. He told me to do what I had to do for my father, and we agreed not to bring you up in conversation. We focused on our relationship. But my journey into motherhood has and always will be guided by the vision of what little Cicely deserved. Little Cicely deserved a loving family. She deserved stability, and she deserved parents who wanted to be their better selves. Despite these devastations, I have found comfort in the fact that you are not my only parent. Regardless of your attempts to manipulate an unhealthy loyalty with your children, I managed to distance myself and limit your access to me. I know now that you were not my only chance at a family. I created my family, and I've reunited with the family that my father left and gave to me. While you may have created my own family, sorry, I messed up my words. Disregard that last one. While you may have taken my father's life, you will have no hand in his legacy. I am his legacy. My children are his legacy, and his legacy will live on through us. Your legacy will end with you, Beverly. I want to remember my father's life and his love. Now that I hold what is left in his remains, Beverly, no longer resting in an unmarked grave, I plan to give my father a proper farewell by returning his remains to his homeland, where they will rest alongside his mother's grave in eternity. I express deep gratitude to all those who have supported me. My father's integrity, it will never be forgotten. Your Honor, as you deliberate my mother's sentencing, please consider the irreparable harm she has inflicted to those closest to her. Her merciless actions stripped my father from a second chance and tore away loved ones from both sides of our family. Justice must be served, not only for my father, but for those who have forever been changed by her ruthless actions. I formally request restitution and intend to utilize all proceeds to help support children of murdered parents. Thank you.
I know the audio on that is a little bit rough. I apologize for that, but that was a live recording of the impact statements from both Beverly's daughter, Cicely, who was Roberto's daughter, and of course, Roberto's sister led off with the impact statements. They were extremely powerful, and watching them was even more powerful, and I really wanted to share that with you. So thank you for listening to that. Beverly is 100% a narcissist. When she was on the stand, she was speaking like with this Italian accent. So the prosecutor was kind of like, were you speaking with your dialect now? And she's like, what dialect? Talking real soft and sweet. You know, the whole time her daughter was giving her impact statement, her daughter kept looking at her and just really hard staring at her. Of course, her mother wouldn't look at her. And also when Beverly was on the stand giving her testimony, she said she even told the attorney, the prosecutor, that she didn't want to look at him because she kept turning to look at the jury. And he's like, you need to look at me. And she's like, well, I don't want to look at you. I want to look at the people who are going to determine my fate. You know what I mean? But it was like she had this weak demeanor, speaking very softly, just trying to win over the jury. And a couple of times it got a little tenacious between the two, the prosecutor and this woman. So you could start to see her true strength come out, like how she really is, but she kept that shit tamped down pretty good. Beverly was actually found guilty, and they got her at second-degree murder, which I find appalling because it was planned. A planned murder is first degree premeditated. But there was some wonky shit going on because when she was arrested in Italy, they pinched her when she was checking into a hotel there. So she was actually held in prison in Italy for 2 years. So she must have some sort of citizenship there, because it was like this whole big thing back and forth about getting her extradited there. So there was something to do with, again, I think maybe some of her citizenship and what she could be charged with over here. It was wonky as shit. But now at the time she was found guilty, I think she was like 50 something. I want to say 54 years old. She looks way older than that. And she was given, I think, 40 to 50 years, second degree murder, no parole, no chance of parole. So by that, I mean, it really is a life sentence that this woman received, because, I mean, that's going to put her at, 80, 90 years old. So sadly, her daughter was roped into it because her daughter only wanted to please her mother. So she's spending the rest of her life in jail. Christopher, he's spending quite a good chunk of his life in jail. And, she's got these other 2 girls that are without their mother, and one certainly without their father. That's kind of a little crazy story in my hometown.
That is crazy.
Mm-hmm.
This woman is psychotic, and I kind of agree with you. It was planned out. They probably kind of painted it as like a rash kind of crime of passion, so to speak, in the moment with the way it went down. It was like a bash and thrash. It was insane.
Yeah, and she was just found guilty this past April of 2024.
I'm kind of surprised that the 21-year-old's daughter and friends, which he was basically just couch surfing friends, and they both did drugs. Like, I'm surprised their defense attorneys didn't get them a little more lenient sentencing, because the picture that you paint obviously paints her as a controlling, overbearing character. And these kids they're kids. I mean, yes, they're legal age, I guess, but they're young, dumb, and on drugs.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, obviously they were involved in the murder. They should do some time. But I'm just kind of surprised and taken back that she was all of that, and they got basically just as much time as she did.
Right, exactly. And so remember I told you about the documentary that David Schock did? He was a communications professor. So it sounds like he, in other past unsolved cases, had worked with the sheriffs and did, made these documentaries. So he made this documentary. He was contacted, because he heard about the case. He's like, oh, thank God I don't have to do that documentary. Well, then hop, skip, and a jump, and boom, here's a phone call from the sheriff's department in Eaton County in Charlotte, requesting that this man do a documentary and get it out there and post it. Now, I saw bits and pieces of the documentary, but I want to look that up, and I want to include a link to the show. But he did the documentary, and 13 years later, it was 2015 when Deneen Duchamp, the daughter that was involved in the murder, called in to say, I know who that was. So, finally, I guess her guilt.
So she ratted herself out, basically. Is that what you're saying?
Mm-hmm. Herself, Christopher, and her mother, Beverly. It was her.
Wow.
Yeah. And
out more about her, like how her life went. Was her life a hot, steaming pile of crap because of everything that she did?
I don't really know of any more details. I mean, this was so unsolved, and it was like, after like the moving to Jamaica and all that, I don't know when exactly it is or why. And I think, of course, there must have been family in Texas. And so she had been in Texas all this time. So I don't really know anything more about how her life was. I'm thinking maybe it just finally, she carried it with her for all these years. I don't know. You and I both seen our share of patients who have passed away. We know what that death looks like. I know you've seen some pretty damn brutal shit in ICU, CCU, so have I. But to actually participate in murdering someone hitting them with a hammer. And Christopher, during his testimony, like, he held up his fingers, like, this dude had a big, big hole in his head. You know what I mean? And then to do everything they did to suffocate, like, to be a witness of all that, like, I don't even know how you could sleep at night. She was 21 years old, so maybe her conscience just got to her.
Yeah, I would probably beg to guess that her life didn't go very well after that. Mm-hmm. She probably suffered with some drug abuse and all of that, trying to self-medicate herself throughout the years, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm. Well, they were all into partying pretty good in Charlotte, right? Coke, alcohol, pot. I'm sure that didn't change wherever it was wherever she was in Texas. But, yeah. At least she spoke up. Finally, maybe she just thought, you know what? She saw the documentary, because that is what David Schock, the man who put this together, he said, I'm okay with waiting. I have patience because I'm not trying to reach a lot of people. I'm trying to reach one person, just one. That one person is going to finally come forward. And they did.
Well, it's wide open, so to speak.
Yeah, and it happened. So that's a little crazy-ass story. Hometowner.
That's in your little hometown.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And there's also another murder in my hometown that happened a long time ago when Todd and I were just kids. And crazy enough, I believe that man's last name was McMillan as well. But Todd says, Trace, there's a lot of McMillans.
Get to that down the road?
Yeah, we'll get to that down the road. So there you go. Our Jack in the Box is Robert Caraballo, and it's very sad. So thank you, everyone, for listening. We appreciate you, as always. We look forward to seeing you back on Wednesday for Round Robin. So have a great week, everyone. Bye.
Bye.